A San Antonio family is grieving tonight after police say their loved one was run over and killed in a parking lot north of downtown. It happened last Sunday, and today the family confirmed the suspect is the victim's own brother-in-law.
February 7th was supposed to be a celebration. Bryan Brown turning 38, family together, good vibes. But 7 days earlier, his own brother-in-law made sure he'd never see that birthday. And girl, the way this went down. In a parking lot? Over what? We still don't fully know. But what we do know will shake you. In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear. San Antonio, Texas, a city where family means everything, where you ride for your people, where blood and bonds run deep. Bryan Brown understood that. At 37 years old, he was living his life surrounded by the people he loved. His daughter, his Aunt Lucinda Gonzalez, his extended family. They were his world. And then there was Jonathan Perez, 36 years old, Bryan's brother-in-law. But see, they weren't just connected by marriage. These two were tight, like every single day tight. They hung out daily, shared laughs, shared life. The kind of relationship where you don't even have to call ahead. You just show up. That was them. Bryan had a daughter, and that little girl was his pride. She was preparing for her quinceañera, one of those milestone moments that Latino families pour their hearts into. The planning, the dress, the celebration of her becoming a young woman. It was set for February 7th, 2026, the same day as Bryan's birthday. So the family did what families do. They adjusted. They planned a surprise party for Bryan a week early, on February 1st. That way, he could celebrate his day, and then they could all focus on his daughter's special moment. Thoughtful, right? The kind of thing that shows how much love was in this family. Lucinda, Bryan's aunt, was one of the people making it happen. She was married to Xavier Baca, 44 years old, another man who loved Bryan like family. These weren't just relatives checking boxes at holiday dinners. These were people who showed up for each other, who made memories together, who built a life around connection. February 1st rolled around. The surprise was planned. People were gathering. It was supposed to be one of those nights you remember for all the right reasons. Laughter, music, maybe some drinks, definitely some food. A Saturday night in San Antonio where family came together to celebrate one of their own. Bryan had no idea what was waiting for him. The surprise party, yes, but also something else. Something nobody saw coming. The celebration was underway. People were in good spirits, enjoying themselves. At some point during the night, Bryan, Xavier, and Jonathan ended up in a parking lot near San Pedro Avenue and West Laurel Street. It's not exactly clear what brought them there, whether they stepped outside to talk, to get some air, or just to continue the night in a different setting. But what we do know is this: a fight broke out. Now look, arguments happen, especially when people have been drinking, when emotions are high, when you're in that late-night space where things can go left real quick. Maybe it was something small that got big. Maybe it was something that had been building. The details of what sparked it? Those aren't fully clear. But what happened next is crystal clear, and it's devastating. Jonathan Perez, the man who spent every day with Bryan, the man who was part of this family, made a choice. He didn't walk away. He didn't try to calm things down. He didn't take a breath and remember who he was dealing with. He got in his car. And girl, he didn't just get in his car to leave. He got in his car, and he pointed it right at them. Bryan and Xavier, two men who loved him, who trusted him, who were family. They were standing in that parking lot, maybe still heated from whatever words had been exchanged, maybe trying to make sense of what was happening. Jonathan hit the gas. The car came at them fast. Not a slow roll, not a moment of hesitation. He accelerated, speeding through that parking lot like they were nothing, like years of friendship, of family dinners, of daily conversations meant nothing. The impact was brutal. Bryan Brown, 37 years old, celebrating his birthday a week early so his daughter could have her moment, was struck. Xavier Baca, the man married to Bryan's aunt, was struck. Both men went down in that parking lot, their bodies broken by a machine driven by someone they called family. And Jonathan, he didn't stop. He didn't hit the brakes and jump out in horror at what he'd just done. He didn't call 911. He didn't try to help the men he'd just run over. He fled, just drove off into the San Antonio night, leaving two men bleeding in a parking lot, leaving chaos and screaming and a family that would never be the same. It's just before 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning. What was supposed to be a birthday celebration is now a crime scene. The parking lot near San Pedro Avenue and West Laurel Street is lit up with sirens, red and blue lights cutting through the darkness. Bryan Brown is on the ground. He's not moving. He's not breathing. The injuries from being hit by a car at that speed, they're catastrophic. There's nothing anyone can do. Right there, in that parking lot, surrounded by pavement and confusion, Bryan is pronounced dead at the scene. 37 years old. 1 week away from his 38th birthday. A father, a nephew, a friend. Gone. Xavier Baca is also on the ground, but he's still alive. Barely. His injuries are critical, the kind that make paramedics move fast and pray harder. They load him into an ambulance, rushing him to a local hospital where doctors will fight to save his life. He's in bad shape. Real bad shape. But he's got a chance. The family that had gathered for a surprise party is now gathered in horror. Lucinda Gonzalez, Xavier's wife, Bryan's aunt, the woman who helped plan this whole celebration, is watching her world fall apart. Her husband is in critical condition. Her nephew is dead. And the man who did it? Her other nephew by marriage. Family, police, are on scene, trying to piece together what happened. Witnesses are giving statements, some of them still in shock, some of them crying, all of them trying to make sense of violence that came out of nowhere. The story starts to come together. A fight, an escalation, a car used as a weapon, two men struck, one man fleeing. Law enforcement moves quickly. They put out information on Jonathan Perez, description of his vehicle, direction he was headed. In situations like this, time matters. A driver who just committed a hit and run, who's possibly intoxicated, who's already shown he's willing to harm people. He's a danger to everyone on the road. It doesn't take long. Officers locate Jonathan nearby, not far from the scene, like he didn't even try to get away, like maybe some part of him knew there was no outrunning what he'd just done. They pull him over, approach the vehicle, and immediately they can tell he's intoxicated. The man who just killed his brother-in-law, who just critically injured another family member, who just destroyed a family celebration, is drunk behind the wheel. The same wheel he used as a weapon minutes earlier. Jonathan Perez is taken into custody. No struggle, no chase, no drama. Just a man facing the consequences of a choice he can never take back. The investigation is straightforward in some ways, complicated in others. The facts are clear. Two men struck by a vehicle, one dead, one critical. The driver fled and was found intoxicated. Open and shut, right? But this isn't a stranger. This isn't some random act of violence between people who didn't know each other. This is family. and that adds layers that investigators have to navigate carefully. Detectives interview witnesses who saw the fight, who saw Jonathan get in the car, who saw what happened next. They're talking to family members who are grieving, who are angry, who are confused about how someone they loved could do something so destructive. These aren't easy conversations. The physical evidence tells its own story. The parking lot, the point of impact, the damage to Jonathan's vehicle, the injuries to Bryan and Xavier. Forensic teams document everything, building a case that will eventually go before a judge and jury. Xavier Baca, fighting for his life in the hospital, becomes a crucial part of the investigation. His survival means there's a witness, someone who was there, who experienced the same violence that killed Bryan. If he pulls through, if he recovers enough to speak, his testimony will matter. And he does pull through. Against the odds, Xavier survives his critical injuries. It's a long road, painful and uncertain, but he makes it. Bryan's family loses one member that night, but doesn't lose two. It's a small mercy in an ocean of grief. The toxicology reports on Jonathan confirm what officers already knew. He was intoxicated. How intoxicated? What his blood alcohol level was. Whether he was impaired to the point of not knowing what he was doing or just impaired enough to make terrible decisions. Those details will matter in court. But here's what the family is left with. Bryan is gone. Xavier is traumatized, physically and emotionally. And Jonathan, the man they saw every day, the man they welcomed into their lives, is sitting in jail facing charges that will put him away for years. The question nobody can answer. Why? What was the fight about? What words were said that made Jonathan feel like getting in that car was the answer? What level of anger or intoxication or brokenness leads a man to point a vehicle at people he loves? The family doesn't have those answers. The investigation doesn't have those answers. Maybe Jonathan doesn't even have those answers.
The family of Bryan Brown says what started out as a birthday celebration ended in a family tragedy.
This was just something that wasn't supposed to happen, something that shouldn't have happened.
February 7th, 2026 would have been Bryan Brown's 38th birthday. But Saturday afternoon, his family gathered at the area where his life was cut short.
We were having a surprise party for him last Saturday because today is his birthday. Happy heavenly birthday, mijo, I love you.
Lucinda Gonzalez, Bryan's aunt, says they celebrated a week early on February 1st because Brown's daughter was going to be in a quinceañera on his actual birthday. Police say Brown and his aunt's husband, Xavier Baca, were walking in a parking lot near San Pedro Avenue and West Laurel Street when a fight broke out with Brown's brother-in-law, 36-year-old Jonathan Perez. Perez then left, got in his car, and sped out of the parking lot, hitting Brown and Baca.
We were trying to control, and it just got out of control.
Perez then took off without stopping to help, but police were quickly able to track him down nearby and was found to be intoxicated. Brown was pronounced dead at the scene, and Baca was taken to the hospital in critical condition, but survived. Brown's family says he and his brother-in-law were close and hung out together every day. Now the grieving family says they just want to lay Brown to rest and leave everything in God's hands.
He loved his brother-in-law, and he would want our family to be, peaceful with everything.
And Perez is now facing charges of intoxication manslaughter, intoxication assault, collision involving single bodily injury, and collision involving death. Mike Jimenez, KINS 5.
Jonathan Perez sits in custody, facing a list of charges that read like a nightmare. Intoxication manslaughter, collision involving death, intoxication assault, collision involving serious bodily injury. Each charge represents a life destroyed, a family shattered, a choice that can never be undone. The legal process moves forward the way it always does, slowly, deliberately. While Bryan's family is drowning in grief, While they're planning a funeral instead of celebrating a birthday, the system grinds through its procedures. Prosecutors build their case. It's not complicated from a legal standpoint. They have witnesses. They have physical evidence. They have a victim who died at the scene, and another who survived critical injuries. They have a defendant who was found intoxicated shortly after fleeing the scene. The pieces fit together cleanly. But this case, it's about more than just the evidence. It's about the why. It's about the relationship. It's about how someone can go from being family to being the person who takes that family member's life. The courtroom proceedings reveal the facts in that cold, clinical way the law operates. Testimonies are given. Evidence is presented. The parking lot is described in detail. The positions of the bodies, the trajectory of the vehicle, the speed at which Jonathan was traveling when he struck Bryan and Xavier. Xavier Baca, recovered enough to appear, likely has to relive that night, having to stand up and talk about the moment someone he trusted came at him with a car, the impact, the pain, waking up in a hospital not knowing if he'd survive. That's trauma on top of trauma. The defense has limited options. The facts are what they are. Jonathan got in his car. Jonathan drove at two men. Jonathan hit them. Jonathan fled. He was intoxicated. Those aren't things you can argue away. So the focus shifts to intent, to state of mind, to whether this was murder or manslaughter, whether Jonathan meant to kill or whether his judgment was so impaired he didn't understand what he was doing. But here's the thing. The family has to sit through. Lawyers debating degrees of culpability while Bryan is still dead. Legal. Arguments about blood alcohol levels and premeditation while they're living with a hole that can never be filled. The trial, when it happens, forces everyone to confront what occurred that night. Not just the physical act, the car hitting two men, but everything that led to it. The drinking, the argument, the decision to get behind the wheel, the choice to accelerate instead of brake. Jonathan's fate is now in the hands of the legal system. Whatever sentence he receives, whether it's years or decades, it won't bring Bryan back. It won't erase Xavier's injuries. It won't heal the family. February 7th, 2026 arrived. Bryan Brown's 38th birthday. The day his family should have been celebrating with him, taking photos, making memories. Instead, they were at the spot where he died, holding a vigil, saying happy birthday to someone who would never age another year. Lucinda Gonzalez, Bryan's aunt, standing in that parking lot putting together words that shouldn't have to be said. Happy heavenly birthday, mijo. I love you. That's what's left. Talking to someone who can't answer. Celebrating a birthday that will never be celebrated again. The family did what so many families in their position do. They found their way to grace. Not because Jonathan deserved it. Not because what he did was forgivable in any conventional sense. But because holding on to anger, letting it consume them, wouldn't bring Bryan back. He loved his brother-in-law, you know, and he would want our family to be peaceful with everything, someone from the family said. Think about that. Bryan, the victim, being invoked as a reason to find peace. His love for Jonathan, even after Jonathan killed him, becoming the path forward for a grieving family. They left it in God's hands. That phrase gets used a lot, but here, it carries weight. Because what else can you do when the legal system runs its course, and you're still left with the absence? When justice is served, but your loved one is still gone? You find something bigger than yourself to hold on to, or you drown. Bryan's daughter had to go through with her quinceañera without her father there. That milestone moment, that celebration of becoming a young woman, forever marked by his absence. Every photo from that day, every dance, every tradition, all of it shadowed by what happened 1 week earlier. Xavier Baca survived, but he's living with the physical and emotional scars of being run over by someone he considered family. Every time he walks, every time he feels pain in his body, he's reminded, and he has to navigate forgiving Jonathan while also processing his own trauma. This case, it's a reminder of how fast everything can change, how one night, one fight, one decision can unravel years of relationship and love. Bryan and Jonathan hung out every day, every single day. That's not casual friendship, that's brotherhood. And in minutes, all of it was destroyed. It's also a reminder about alcohol and choices. We don't know if Jonathan would have gotten in that car sober. We don't know if he would have made the same choice with a clear mind. But we do know that intoxication played a role, and that role was deadly. For the family left behind, there's no neat conclusion, no moment where everything makes sense. They're navigating grief, anger, forgiveness, and loss all at once. They're trying to remember Bryan for who he was, a man who loved his family, who loved his daughter, who loved the brother-in-law who killed him, while also dealing with the violence of how he died. The parking lot near San Pedro Avenue and West Laurel Street, it's just a parking lot to most people. But for Bryan's family, it's sacred ground. It's where they lost him. It's where they gather on his birthday. It's where the life they knew ended and a new, painful reality began. Bryan Brown should have turned 38. He should have watched his daughter grow up. He should have made more memories with his family. He should have had decades ahead of him. Instead, his story ends in a parking lot, at the hands of someone he trusted, on a night that was supposed to be about celebration. And his family is left holding on to love, leaning on faith, and trying to find a way forward in a world that no longer includes him. That's the legacy. Not just the tragedy, but the grace they found in the aftermath. The way they chose peace over vengeance. The way they honored Bryan's love for Jonathan even as they mourned Bryan's death. It doesn't make it fair. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't bring him back, but it's all they have. Rest in peace, Bryan Brown. Taken too soon. Loved deeply. Missed forever.